Welcome to DMV Spotlight on ESPN 630, the sports capital, where we shine a light on local stories from D.C., Maryland, and Virginia to inform, enlighten, and inspire you. I'm Barbara Britt, and my guest today is Colleen Bernhardt. She's the Director of Operations for Lucky Dog Animal Rescue. It's a local organization that has saved 15,000 pet lives since its inception, 2009. I believe that's correct. And thank you, Colleen, so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Colleen, that's a staggering number.
Yes.
And we need to start there.
Correct.
So obviously you guys do amazing work. And you're out in the community trying to connect, people with pets and to save these animals' lives. But let's begin with, why are there so many animals that are neglected, abused, unwanted, discarded? How does this happen?
Yeah, so we work primarily and very similarly to a lot of rescues up here with shelters that are high kill shelters in very rural areas. So areas that are underfunded, there's no staff, there's no volunteers, there's just not the people and quite literally the power to support all of the animals that are in that area. And then on the other hand, there's the educational part that's at the root of our mission, is to help promote spay-neuter, how to properly take care of pets responsibly from the inception. A pet is not, for a couple days, it's for life. So, and I just think that's not communicated and kind of at the root of a lot of communities that we work with. So they're not spay-neutering, and there's far more puppies and kittens, et cetera, that then grow up to be adult dogs, and the cycle continues.
So, I'm just hearing Bob Barker in my head, spay neuter. This is a message, and I know he's no longer available to say that, no longer with us, but that is a message that has been out there. Why does it not sink in? I mean, we've all heard, I want my so-and-so to have cute little puppies or kittens. How do you approach that?
I think it really depends on the community and starting from education. I genuinely, just from having visited a lot of our rural shelters that we work with, I don't think people are doing this necessarily, out of anything other than they don't know. So how do we help them learn why it's important, and that, it's important that these dogs and cats are not roaming the streets, they're not tied up, they're not, that's not the proper way to ensure their safety and take care of them. And a lot of people, spay-neuter costs money. How do we get to help with that? So we've sponsored clinics in South Carolina, Puerto Rico, that help with vaccines that are just regular core vaccines, and then all the way up to spay-neuter monthly preventatives, kind of maintaining and teaching people what is needed on a monthly basis, a daily basis for the dog's care. And that's kind of how it starts, and then they spread the word.
And then, litters of puppies and kittens can happen in a dog or cat that's not fixed many times.
Correct. And it can happen as, young as 4 to 6 months. So we spay neuter our pets if they're, young puppies like that by 6 months, and we expect our adopters to do the same. A lot of shelters do it even younger, depending on what their availability is and their ability to do so. But a lot of people just don't know that. So when one, mom has, a litter of 8, they could continue to happen. And that mom just keeps going. And we want to help her and the puppies, of course. But it really starts at the root of, we could have helped her first by spay-neutering early on.
And so then so in those education efforts, are you able to work through the community, or are you able to get into schools? I mean, how does this effort move forward in terms of really, let's cut this off at the source rather than always treating the symptom, as it were, as much as we love our dogs and cats?
Yeah, no, totally. I think it depends on the shelter and the community we're working with of how we can actually, disseminate that info. In South Carolina, for example, we have wonderful volunteers that work strictly for us. They're amazing. They do this every single day in the shelter. We have our own, wing of dogs that is specifically, we know is going to be pulled for Lucky Dog. And they are the ones who go out in the community or host that vaccine clinic, and we help with the vets that are there, and we kind of bring them all to the shelter and host like a mobile clinic, quote unquote. But then we've also done efforts in Puerto Rico a couple of years ago. We went to the island of Culebra and went to a school and did a vaccine clinic and started from, 7-year-olds and taught them why this was important. So they're going to go home to their families and continue to spread that word. But that's also a very small effort. So, how do we all kind of get that mission together is our main point.
And would you ever see that happening in local schools around here? Because there are, and again, I'm not trying to throw stones at people, and I know people do breeding for a living and what have you. Is that an issue or not necessarily?
I think we can 100% start with schools here. And to be honest, I take my first lucky dog, I have two, to schools all the time. I was literally just last Friday visiting a Girl Scout troop that are ages 7 to 8. So they didn't quite know what I was talking about, but it was still a really fun conversation about what is fostering. How do you bring a dog home that's not yours, and where does it go? Why is that important? So not necessarily at the spay-neuter level for them, but even they just got so excited. I'm sure they went home to their parents to talk about, a dog came to visit us today. So that's definitely something that we can all do.
That's exciting. Okay, so let's talk about the process people may be considering getting an animal. Why is it important to go to a local shelter or go to Lucky Dog Animal Rescue and consider one of the animals there?
So all of the pets that we have are coming up from these high kill shelters where they have no other hope of living. Just literally, that's it. If we did not pull them, or if another rescue did not pull them, or if a shelter didn't help them up here, they would have no option. A lot of high kill shelters euthanize for space, and that's obviously not fair to the animals, who are absolutely amazing. Of course, every animal is going to have a transitional period. It's like a kid. It's like bringing a child into the home and teaching them, the new environment. But there are so many animals that from ages, 8 weeks to 8 years to 12, kittens, puppies, dogs, cats, that are absolutely wonderful and just need that chance. So I personally, because I'm so passionate about it, of course, don't understand how anyone couldn't do that. But of course, it's about that education. Some people don't know. I grew up not knowing that necessarily, and then it changed when I moved here. And I think just promoting that adopting doesn't mean you're getting an animal that's going to need a lot of work, because I think that's a stigma that I want to break too, and that we want to break. And that rescues are often here for you as a resource. So from day one, we're going to check up on you. Do you have questions? Do you need anything? Do you need resources? Through, 10 years from now, we love a picture and an update. So, and I think it goes all the way through.
So some of it depends also on the age of the animal that you're getting, and it depends on their backstory. Is the dog already housebroken? If it's a puppy, you can expect a certain amount of investment, at least early on in training. And a lot of times, at least the little I know about it, people will actually surrender their animals, honestly, because they didn't take the time to train the animal proper. An animal needs to be trained. You don't want it to jump up and take the steak off your plate at dinner table. That goes backwards. So help us understand that process.
Exactly. So because we have litters that could be as small as, 7 or 8 weeks old, their prime kind of socialization window is up until 14 to 16 weeks. Obviously, we're going to adopt a lot of dogs past 16 weeks, so we don't know what's happened to them prior. So it's a lot of patience. It's also thinking about it from a human perspective, or from even, a baby perspective. We don't expect babies or humans, when they go into a new home or a new environment, to immediately adjust. And it's the exact same for an animal. So giving them the proper time, it takes a couple days for them to show their kind of true selves, a couple weeks for them to get more comfortable with everyone in the home, a couple months until they're well trained, years until they get used to really where they are. And if you think about it like that, I think it opens up an opportunity to be a little bit more patient from the start with them. A puppy is going to be a puppy. We have an extra conversation about people who want a puppy because it's a lot of work, but it's also kind of a blank slate, but also you're the one creating it. So how are you going to shape that puppy to not jump up on the table, from the start? However, if you don't do that, 3 years later, that's the dog that's in the shelter. And that's the dog that still needs another home and has no basis of why they need another home. And that's awful. So how do we help people from the start, have those good resources, and have trainers in their back pocket, have, people that they can call, a good vet. We call people all the time if they need help or if they just have simple questions, because we've probably been through it to some level. But I think it's also important to realize that the adult dogs might not have been given a chance. It's not that they were actually in trouble or, neglected or causing a lot of issues in the home. It could be a very simple reason why they were returned, and now they just don't know why, and they need another one.
And is it, with an older dog, let's say, is it possible to train them, and what does that entail?
Absolutely. My 2 lucky dogs, not to talk about them too much, I adopted at 2 and 3 respectively. They're now 7 and 6. And 100% they were able to be trained. each dog is going to have their own special task you want to work on. I don't want to say issue, but my dog, for example, pulled a lot. She's half beagle, but she's also incredibly smart.
That's she's beagle. Yeah.
Correct. So she's a beagle German Shepherd. So it's just a stubborn, smart combo. But she had a lot of crate anxiety because she'd never been crated before. So all of a sudden I moved her to this tiny little apartment in the city. She came from rural Virginia. That was the thing we worked on. But she was amazingly, easy to housebreak, all of that. So you kind of pick your battles. And that's why we want to ensure prior to adopting that you have all those resources and that you're better prepared than you think you are.
And let's talk about crating, because I know some people feel strongly, but some people don't always understand what crating is and what you mean by that. So take us through that.
So a crate, quite literally, is what we call a small den for the dog. We want to make it positive. It's where we actually ask our fosters to crate their foster dog when they eat, sleep, and when the foster leaves. It creates a safe space for the foster so that they're not, or your personal dog, so that they're not, getting into trouble while you're gone. It also kind of maintains that, if you're traveling, if you have to board them, if you have to take them somewhere new, if a construction worker is coming over, if someone random is coming into your house, you want to make it somewhere that they can go and just chill. So we always think of it as a positive kind of you going to your room because you're done for the day, or you just want to hang out in somewhere that's safe and no one will bother you. So we highly encourage and actually require our fosters do it, but we always talk about that with adopters to make it a positive experience. It's never ever for punishment.
And there are people who may think, wow, that sounds mean, because I wouldn't want to be in a little tiny space and confined. So help us understand that. I mean, we know that dogs are den animals. That's sort of where they're comfortable, but help us walk through that uncomfortableness.
Yeah. So, and it's easy to speak from personal experience, but my second dog is extremely shy and from Puerto Rico. And she actually required a second dog in the home, which I can talk about too, about why we put that requirement on some dogs. And as soon as I brought her in, the first thing she did was went in her crate. She had no idea it was her crate. She had no idea what was in it. She literally walked in my house, laid down in it because she felt safe. So she is the polar opposite of my other dog, and I think that kind of shows how different dogs take it. Obviously, some dogs aren't going to love the small space, and they don't necessarily have to, but it's a good thing to start from the beginning to acclimate them to that, because it is, their little place, especially if there's kids in the house or their dogs in the house, and they want, their own time. That's a good tell for also the people in the home to be like, oh, nope, they just want to go relax and, hang out there.
And I have it's as much protection for the dog as it is for any person who might be coming in to say, okay, this dog doesn't have to have lots of people around it, especially if people are coming in your home. And that can be an anxious time for an animal.
Exactly. And that gives them solace to have that crate, because every instance prior to that was a positive one. So if that's where they get all their, high value, good bones or Kong with peanut butter, or their own just food or a toy that they like, they know that they can go in there and no one's going to take it away from them. No one's going to bother them. And it's their, safe space, because they might not have had that prior.
So let's talk about, we live in the DC area, and obviously going out to the suburbs and what have you, there's more room. But in the city or even in some of our suburbs, people they work long hours. They might think, wow, I don't have the space. The dog would have to be in all day. We do see, we do see animals out and about. But tell us about that reality for folks who live in the Washington area.
Yeah, so obviously that's a huge part of our adoption base. A lot of people who don't have yards, they live in, an 18-floor apartment building. But you also hear on the flip side how incredibly dog-friendly DC is, and I think that that's awesome and why I love it too. But when we have a pre-approval process that we take people through. So if someone comes and says, I would like a dog, I have no idea what kind, when, I just know I want one. We want to help you through that process and then help you find a good fit. So that's when we're going to talk about all of your lifestyle. I live in a studio apartment. I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have a yard. I live in the middle of Chinatown, or, maybe a little bit farther out and there's a dog park. How do we acclimate that to the dog you're looking for? And also, how do we realistically find you a good fit for that? Not every dog's going to be perfect, for a city environment, but we also have tons that are. So, and I personally think, because I got my first dog when I lived in a studio, that you can do it. It's what you do for the dog outside. So if you're going to take them on 3 walks a day, you're going to go to the dog park after work, they're going to be happy as a clam to just hang out in your house, have a midday dog walker, be able to go explore outside, but they don't need a lot of space. A lot of people think that dogs need a lot of space or they need a yard. obviously that's awesome if you have one, but it's not required for the dog as long as you're helping them maintain that socialization and exercise outside of the home. And that we have a serious conversation about that, because a lot of our dogs are I would say majority of them are 1 to 3, medium sized, pretty high energy dogs. They're young, they want to go run. So they're not going to be good if you want to keep them in your apartment all day. But that's why we require a midday dog walker. We talk about, what's that opportunity for running and playtime, like kids going to the playground or recess. They need that daily. So does a dog. And a lot of people don't realize that direct correlation between their exercise and getting all their energy out is exactly how they're going to behave in the house. So they're not going to listen to you to train if they're going crazy and want to go run in circles. They want to go run and have fun with their dog friends, or run with you, or, go hiking or whatever it is. And then they're going to be much more able to retain all the information you're trying to teach them. They're not going to chew up your furniture. They're not going to get into stuff. And that's kind of how you maintain that balanced life, as long as you're able to do what's good for the dog outside your home.
And there are a lot of people, you see the signs, you see the ads, the little tear-off sheets for midday dog walkers. That is a little cottage industry. Do you help people find the right person for them?
We have a list of resources on our website for trainers, vets, dog walkers, boarding, daycare. We even work with a few partner daycares in the area that help us temporarily, quote unquote, foster dogs, essentially, until they find their forever home. Or say a foster goes out of town, we have a daycare facility that they can go to. It's only a couple dogs out of the maybe 60 to 100 we have available at any time. But it's really awesome because then they get that, open play with all of their friends. They get all their zoomies out, before they go to an event or meet someone. But then it also helps with their socialization. It teaches them peer-to-peer cues, of how to treat other dogs. And that's really important for people who live in the city as well.
It is. And so let's talk about some of these options that you have. You really, when I went on the website, which is luckydoganimalrescue.org, and we'll give that again at the end of the program, I'm talking today to Colleen Bernhard, the Director of Operations for Lucky Dog Animal Rescue. You have a lot of events. It really seems like you have a very strong effort to be in all of the areas of the DMV, of the city, with adoption events for cats and for dogs. I know this coming weekend, actually today, February 9th, from 12 to 3 at NOMA on New York Avenue in Northeast, there's an event at the Petco Animal Supplies that folks can just come, and what will they see when they come to an event like that?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because a lot of people think that a rescue might be the same as a shelter, and we're actually different in terms of we don't have a physical space. We don't have a facility with dogs. As a foster-based rescue, all of our animals live in volunteers' homes. So we cannot function without volunteers and their fosters. We're primarily volunteer-based, and that we rely on them a lot at our adoption events, which I can talk about. But basically, we bring up dogs from these high-kill shelters normally Saturday. And then we require that a foster comes and picks them up and brings them to our adoption event the next day. From there, they have a couple different options of how to foster, but those adoption events give the public the opportunity to actually come meet the animal in person. We do post all of our animals on our website, so you can definitely go and see everybody's bio and kind of scroll through the pictures before they physically come up to the area. But it's important to us that we continue to grow our geographic location, because a lot of people, want to come and see all the dogs at one time. So how do we facilitate that when we don't have an actual place they can come to? So that resulted in, we have a couple adoption events every Saturday that are pretty small, maybe 5 to 10 dogs. And it's important that we can highlight our partners that are smaller pet stores that physically cannot accommodate more than that, but they're wonderful partners to us. And it might be places that have high foot traffic, that people are just going shopping and they happen to run into some dogs. And that's really great to kind of catch their eye. And then our Sunday events are a lot bigger. We can have anywhere from 70 to 100 animals. And that includes dogs and cats. Sometimes we've gone over 100. But we need just as many volunteers, probably twice as many, to go actually handle the animal. But then our adoption coordinators and everyone who takes people through the process. And an adopter can come and see the animals. They get to hang out with them a little bit. We highly, highly encourage people to become pre-approved prior. So that means they've applied, like I was saying earlier, to basically they just know they want to adopt in the future. They don't know exactly what they want or who they want, but we can take them through that process.
And they've thought it through, because I think that's the other thing, is that if, whether you live, by yourself or you have a partner or you're married, whatever it is, you live in a group home of some kind, you're whatever it is, or you have a family, a large family, small family, you really do need to sit down with everybody in the home. How important is that?
Incredibly important. And that's actually part of our process. So to become pre-approved, you fill out an application online. So you go to our website, and then you're matched with an adoption coordinator. Everyone's a volunteer who's doing that, but they reach out to you via email pretty quickly and then want to set up a phone call with you. So the phone call is kind of like this. It's 30 minutes of just talking about your lifestyle, what you're doing, what you're looking for, what you're able to accommodate for an animal, whether it be dog or cat. And then we do a vet and landlord check if applicable. So if you had other pets within the last 5 years or you rent, we want to make sure you can even have a dog. But also, what breed restrictions do you have? A lot of places in the city don't allow certain breeds, don't allow weights, only allow 2 dogs, 1 cat, whatever it might be. So we want to make sure we obviously get that information first because we don't want to get your hopes up. And we want to help you find a good fit that fits there. And then we do a home visit. So the home visit is a crucial part. It can either be virtual, so someone can take you around on a FaceTime in your apartment, or a physical home visit because we have plenty of volunteers who are looking to help with that. And that requires that everyone in the home is home. So that means we want to talk to mom, dad, kids, brother, sister, nanny, friends, roommates, whoever it is, and make sure that they all know you want a dog and that you're okay with it. And who's going to be in part of that dog's life? Is it all of you? How are you helping? Do you have questions? Where do I put the crate? Should I move this plant? What about the wires? Things like that. So it's a quick
kitty litter box.
Correct. It's a quick 10, 15 minute, drop in. Could even be quicker than that, but it really wants to open up another dialogue after you've had that screening, because it's normally with a different volunteer who might know how to answer other questions or have other questions for you. So it's that additional talk. So when you get to an adoption event, it's awesome to be already through that process because then you don't have to do it all again. You find a dog you're a good fit with. We have a quick conversation to actually make sure it's a good fit. You can take them home that day.
That is amazing. And I do have to say, if you are at all interested in thinking about having an animal be part of your family or life, on the 15th of this month, Lucky Dog Animal Rescue will be in Bethesda, in Potomac, and then Sunday the 16th in Falls Church. So really all around the entire area. When you already have a pet in your home and you're looking maybe to have another one, what dimension does that add? How does that become part of the process?
Yeah, so we definitely want to make sure it's not only a good fit for you and the animal, but also your other animal and the animal. So we have a lot of adopters who bring their dogs to adoption events to meet the other dogs. We can also do adoptions outside of events. So we can have a midweek meet and greet at a foster's home where you can take your dog and go meet that dog and make sure it's a good fit. We would have already had the whole conversation with you, obviously, to make sure, we know what you're looking for and vice versa. But I personally, bringing in a second dog was almost easier than bringing in a first dog. But every dog is different. So what your experience was with your first dog might not happen again. And I think that's a good expectation we want to go over prior, because a lot of people are like, oh, I've had dogs for, 2 years, 50 years. I know, everything there is to know, but every dog's going to be different. And are you ready for that? And how can we help you?
That is awesome. So you mentioned that you are not a shelter. So there's no real physical location where there's cages of animals that are waiting, and that really is what they live in until they are adopted. It's a very sad place, although they get the best they can possibly get, I know from most organizations. So you're really focused on rescuing these animals, and you mentioned your foster family. So when the animal comes up, maybe somebody's listening and say, you know what? I know we have a lot of folks in the area for a short time. They're like, we're here for 6 months. We can't take a dog with us. The next time we're assigned somewhere else. But, for now, maybe we could do it. What about that opportunity for folks?
Yeah, I can't talk about fostering enough. We would not be able to function as a rescue without our foster families. And we also completely realize that everyone has a different schedule and a different mindset when it comes to an animal. So like you said, I just met a volunteer last week who's here for 6 months on an internship. And he was like, I miss my dog at home. I'm going to go volunteer and come clean crates and handle dogs. And that's awesome. And that's what helps him. But also, there might be college students or a family with, a bunch of kids that travels a lot, but they want a dog fix. So how do they help with that? So when you foster with us, you can either overnight foster or full-time foster. Overnight means you'd pick up the dog from the transport, is what we call them, on a Saturday. Normally they're in Arlington, but they could be a couple other places where all of our volunteers and staff will be. We're taking, 50 animals off the van. We're doing that this Saturday in Arlington. And Every one of those animals either goes right into an adoptive home. So that's what our adoption coordinators are working on during the week, or they go into a foster. So we have a lot of people who say, I work 10-hour days, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I can't function with a dog. I would just feel too bad, or have a small space or whatever it is. But I want a dog. So they can literally pick up the dog on a Saturday at 4 p.m., bring them to the adoption event on Sunday, handle them from 12 to 3, so they get to talk about the dog with the people who are walking by, and then they're done. At 3 o'clock, the dog's either adopted or they go to another foster, and then that person is the sole reason that dog came up from the shelter.
And they keep them overnight in their home.
Yep. They hang out with them. We can provide a crate. We provide a leash collar tag. You provide the love and the food. And then if you full-time foster, which means you would keep the dog in your home until they're actually adopted, we also provide vetting care. We answer any questions that you might have. We're obviously here as a resource. We provide those monthly preventatives that dogs need and cats. Once they're in their home, and we check that each week, at the adoption event. How are they doing? Do you need anything? But a lot of people, only can foster for a couple days at a time. So we might have full-time fosters who go out of town and need a temporary foster from Thursday to Sunday. And then someone's like, oh, I can totally do that. I just can't commit to a month or whatever it might be. And some dogs get adopted within 5 minutes of coming to their first event. And some are with us for months, up to a year. You never know. But we wouldn't be able to do it without the fosters.
Have you ever had that situation where an animal comes in as a foster, but then ends up for the family there or the foster people, and they say, you know what, I think I'm just going to take this one off the market. This one's going to stay with me.
I'm guilty as charged for being a foster fail. My first foster is sleeping in my bed right now. That was 3 years ago. So yes, 100%. But we also want to make it clear that we don't foster to adopt. Our fostering program is strictly how we run as an organization. We foster to foster and adopt to adopt. Does not mean you can't fail. We call you a loving foster fail. But we don't want people to think that it's necessarily a trial basis, because
Correct.
We need those fosters to function, to bring them to events, keep their well-being every day. Right. And then we coordinate with adopters, and sometimes they become each other, or adopters, end up adopting and coming back 6 months later and want to foster because they had such a good experience, which is awesome.
That is amazing. And I know a lot of times really people, especially when they're getting a new animal in their home, they're thinking they're having a bad memory maybe, but housebreaking, that can be the toughest thing in certain ways. Do you have tips that you will give your adoptive families? Yeah.
So when you adopt from us, you get a full adoption packet with a whole bunch of resources that we find are really helpful in the first couple days. That includes housebreaking tips. If they eat a lot, sleep a lot, don't do anything, if they're crazy, what to expect. And we want to make it very clear that the dog is not their true selves. In the first 5 minutes of bringing them home, they don't know who you are. They don't know what house they're in. It's a brand new experience. So we definitely have all those recommendations. We also follow up with an adoption packet after you adopt from us, and it's a PDF. And all of it's on our website.
That is amazing. And I don't want to get through our time without mentioning your Wags and Wine event. That just cracks me up. On March 28th, tell us about it.
Yeah, so this is, I am not lying, my personal favorite event of the year. It's so much fun. It's dog friendly in a winery. I don't know what could be better than that. We have food. There's amazing auction items. We really rely on donations. That's how we function. Fundraising, donations, grants, asking people to help us, volunteers. That is how we just do our day to day. So coming to this event, you get a wine glass where you can have a free tasting of wine. You can obviously buy more. There's food provided. There's awesome auction items. There's dancing, swing dancing lessons. It's a really, really fun event out in Delaplane, Virginia.
That is beautiful. It's at the Barrel Oak Winery on March 28th. I want to give the website address. It's luckyanimalrescue.org. Lots of information there on how to volunteer. If you want to foster, you can find the application there. And as you said, you can look at some of these darling animals. I do need to mention you've rescued animals from Puerto Rico when they've been in the path of a hurricane, Dorian. And I want to thank you so much for joining me. I've been speaking with Colleen Bernhard, Director of Operations at Lucky Dog Animal Rescue. And thanks to our awesome engineer, Ken Hunter, today. Thank you for joining me on ESPN 630, the Sports Capital DMV Spotlight.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm Barbara Britt.